Good evening, everyone. My name is Victor Simmons Jr., and I have the honor of serving as the library administrator here at the Auburn Avenue Research Library on African American culture and history. Today, we kick off the 2025 Collecting, Researching, and Writing the Black Diaspora Conference, a 4-day conference with 8 online sessions and 14 in-person sessions about all things related to Black culture. Today, I have the privilege of introducing our opening keynote speaker, Professor Illya E. Davis. Illya E. Davis, serves as the Director of Freshman and Senior Academic Success Programs and Professor of Philosophy at Morehouse College. He is a 1989 philosophy graduate of Morehouse College. He pursued a master's degree in religion and culture at Harvard University and doctoral studies at the University of Chicago in philosophy studies. At the University of Chicago in philosophy of religion. He has published on the political thoughts of former Morehouse College President Dr. Benjamin E. Mays, African American Religious Experiences, Black Existential Thought, Black Fraternities and Sororities, and Historically Black Colleges and Universities. Professor Davis has provided in lectures at the University of Chicago, Duke University, Mississippi State University, and the University of Notre Dame. Professor Davis is a frequent social and political contributor to NPR's WABE Atlanta. He teaches and researches in Africana philosophy and race, philosophy of language, and philosophy of religion. He is a member of the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. Give a warm round of applause for Professor Illya E. Davis.
Good evening. So I guess I'll ask informally before I begin, Brother Simmons, are we supposed to exchange? Will there be? Great. That means I'll shorten my talk to move into that part of the program. But first and foremost, I thank Brother Simmons for this opportunity. He invited me, and I must say unsolicited, so I appreciate that. Oftentimes I have to ask people, but I thank you, my brother, for the invitation. And thank you all for coming out. It's not good old Atlanta warmth, little nip in the air, so I appreciate you coming out. So, historically Black colleges and universities. I've done something similar to this in the past, and it's always a tense engagement because having graduated a historically Black college, Morehouse College, in the class of '89, I've often had combative engagements with friends who didn't attend historically Black colleges and universities. It came to a head in graduate school when you would often, if you've ever had occasion for this to happen as a graduate of a historically Black college, everyone wants to tell you why they didn't attend a historically Black college and try to rationalize why it made more sense because, as they would say, quote unquote, they were trying to learn to live in the real world. Quite interesting, real world. So that led me to think about why I attended and whether or not I extracted from the historically Black college what historically Black colleges say they're worth. So I would like to approach this talk, this conversation, from the vantage point of the uses of HBCUs. The subtopic or the sub-area is, have they given us the return on the investment they said we were making? So I choose this because, as you all know, historically Black colleges and universities love to account for the experience as a familial engagement with students, a place where students feel safe, unfettered by issues of race that overwhelm them, but issues of race that can be discussed nonetheless. And so thinking about this evening, it led me to wonder whether or not we have changed over the years, whether or not the approaches, the promises made by historically Black colleges have changed. So I'll act like my students and not have the physical book, but use a book here on the old telly. This is taken from the beloved W.E.B. Du Bois' Souls of Black Folk, of the Training of Black Men, where he states, the function of the Negro College is clear. It must maintain the standards of popular education, and it must seek the social regeneration of the Negro, and it must help in the solution of problems of race, contact, and cooperation. And finally, beyond all this, It must develop men, which we will take to be the human. And I ask, and I hope that you will think with me through this, whether or not this is applicable to our present situation, whether or not what Du Bois tells us is the focus, or should have been the focus of the historically black colleges, is indeed the focus today. I will say no. So I am not a so-called trained historian. I do philosophy. And so for me, it's quite particular for me to look at a particular way of understanding some basic concepts. What does it mean to be at a historically black college? How is it that we maneuver through these halls of education and derive, extract, imbibe senses of what it means to be a human being? Again, what are the promises of historically black colleges and universities? Your child will attend our respective institution. They will come to know themselves. They will be in an environment that's safe and cultivating, and it will cherish them. Well, teaching philosophy at a historically black college, and I've also taught at Clark Atlanta University, I can say that we may be a little behind. And I don't think it's intentional. I don't think it's callous. I think it's a matter of trying to keep up with the market, trying to somehow assume that the best thing for a student is to reduce their engagement to a corporatization, an employment, a reductionism, if I may, because now it's not as much of the racism, the vitriol, the hate being present in the streets as it was during Du Bois's day, as it was during the 1940s and 50s when Benjamin Mays was president of Morehouse, not even in the 60s and the 80s when Hugh Gloster was the president of Morehouse as a student when I was there. And I believe that people let the society off the hook. The assumption was we have settled those fundamental problems and we can now move into a different era, an era of corporatization. What do I mean by corporatization? The idea now that many of our colleges and universities, and sadly the liberal arts sort, has reduced its product to employment. That every student now understands that it's more important to be employed than it is to cultivate their humanity. Now, this isn't a false dichotomy. I think you can do both, but the problem is we have focused most of our energies on will he or she get a job? Now, part of what has to happen at the historically black college is we have to somehow designate the distinction and difference between what we claim or what we promise the student, that they would have the opportunity to invest in a sense of what does the world offer, and may I change the world by the things I study, by my engagements with others. I remember being a graduate student, my advisor would always tell me that, he said, inasmuch as I would like to take credit for the learning of the students, your greatest learning will come from the students with whom you're in school. And that makes a difference. That's part, again, of the virtue of historically black colleges and universities. That you're supposed to put yourself in a situation where you get to interrogate the very diverse ways of being black in the world. I consistently have students wondering, what does it mean to be black? Am I black enough? Well, the beauty of being in a historically black college is it opens up and makes itself available for you to interrogate your fundamental presuppositions about the notion of blackness in a country that is embedded with racism, sexism, anti-homophobic ideas. You name it. We have isms with no end. So the historically black college, again, says, send your children. We'll protect them. We'll guard them. We'll even locate your child within a particular social moment that requires them to think outside of themselves, that the value of being here extends beyond the avarice of self-interest, that your child will cultivate a sense of self. Well, as I said early on, I think that we're missing it because we become frightened by the possibility that what we engage in might be viewed as banal, that it doesn't have any social value. Well, again, I submit to you that the fundamental problem here is that we have failed to cultivate the things that help us understand our humanity. Studying the social sciences, studying the humanities, These are fundamental aspects of cultivation of what it means to be a human being. So when I talk to my students and ask them, what are you thinking about majoring in, for example? And the major oftentimes is reductionist. It's utility versus how might I become better? So what do they tell me? Well, I'm majoring in X because I heard I could get a job. Now, one of my classmates is here, and I must admit that when I initially attended Morehouse, I was an accounting major. Sadly, the sins of the world were on my shoulder. And the problem was, every time someone asked me, why did you select accounting? My answer was similar to the contemporary response. I heard I could get a job. They told me if you major in accounting, you're almost given to employment immediately after graduation. But then, what availed itself of my revision was taking a philosophy course. In the philosophy course, offered by Aaron Parker, I sat there in that class and I began to become enlivened by the conversation, by the ideas that were being represented. And I saw myself in that major. This is what Du Bois is getting at. I could see my humanity come through in the types of conversations, the discussions that we were having. And that moment, I switched my major from accounting to philosophy. This is anecdotal, but I think it gets to the core of what we're going to have to think about as black schools go forward. Whether or not we're going to determine our futures and not be reduced to certain corporatizations and reductionisms of the market. I mean, think about it. Even now we talk about our institutions with highly influenced market language. We call our schools brands. No black person in their right mind should ever use the word brand referring to themselves or anything socially black. Why is that? Brands are commodified entities to be used and abused to make profit. As we know, historically black colleges and all colleges and universities, well, sorry, I'm dating myself. We do have for-profit schools now, but the black schools that I'm thinking of, they're not for-profit schools. And their obligation is to service a community, irrespective, and I know this may create problems, of profit. It can't be profit-driven. If you're profit-driven, you will manipulate the fundamental core instruction and offerings to be sold. That's not what we're in the market for. Our level of integrity should always undermine a willingness to merely play to the least common denominator. So our responsibility is always to lead. And what I'm saying is historically black colleges and universities led before and can lead again now by focusing in on the social condition added to the anthropological vision of what it means to be a human being. And we don't have to sacrifice African American life and culture and history. For example, I love Shakespeare. I love reading Shakespeare. King Lear, Othello are my two favorite plays. When I studied Shakespeare in graduate school, it was always helpful for the professor to organize the specifics of Shakespeare's lessons under the rubric of this is what it means to be a human being. Notions of jealousy, overwhelmed by narcissism, all these images that were being represented, we extract from Shakespeare. So I remember on one occasion I said, oh, well, we could do this if we read Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man, right? No, was the response. That's about black people. Wow. And that's when it hit me, that there's a tendency to reduce the black experience to a very specific existential account of being human versus what it could mean for any and everyone to understand the struggles of being human under the guise of blackness. This is what historical black colleges have been doing for years, trying to get us to expand our notion of being in the world through our particular experiences, but understanding extrapolation will lead you to understand these are exemplary cases of being human. Toni Morrison, beloved. Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye. Toni Morrison's Tar Baby. All of these, black women, yes, but as a man, I could still extract value and meaning of being in the world from these texts. So you should not be as parochial enough to assume it's too particular to account for my reality. What I want historically black colleges and universities to understand is start crafting ways of being in the world that teach self-love through black life experience history. understanding that the particulars do not undermine the universality of these messages. We can still learn from them. White brothers, sisters, or indeed, it's open to you. But what we're doing right now is we're giving way to the market. Corporatizations. Corporations come to our respective schools. They pull in our best and our brightest, offer them money, and off they go. I'll even challenge some of these individuals to consider, how long do you do this? How long do you sacrifice parts of your soul before you realize you forgot to focus on being human? Plato's Republic is a wonderful example. Plato's Socrates is in conversation with Cephalus, a very rich gentleman, not a Greek citizen, so he lives right outside the gates in Athens. What's interesting is he tells Socrates, I've made a lot of money. I'm going to leave it to my children. Now I'm ready to start philosophizing. Well, the definition of philosophizing was learning how to be a human being. So this brother actually said to Socrates, I've made money. Now can you help me cultivate what it means to be a human? Can you now assist me in thinking about the fundamental questions of existence? Well, the problem is, Cephalus, and this is in my own parlance, brother, you missed the boat. Because a lot of the money that you've acquired was probably acquired under the most nefarious dealings. And if you had focused on being human and the extractions of financial engagement, you might not have been rich. It might not have allowed for you to garner wealth, but you would have been a better person. And I've always used this as an example for my students to say, philosophy understood as a way of being in the world, a way of understanding how to be in the world, how to be within a community of individuals, cultivating a sense of reality, even to the notion of what the Germans would call the Weltanschauung, like how do I live in the world such that I produce the best and the most humane ways of being, and that these humane ways of being should afford the community as an amalgam now to have the best social arrangements that produce equity, fairness, integrity, dignity, respect. This is what I want our institutions to do. When I go to certain schools, again, the brothers and the sisters, well, can you get a job doing this? Interestingly enough, and I hate to scare the computer science people, but it's really hard for computer science majors to find jobs now. They have literally created themselves into unemployment. Now, I say that in jest, but for years people will say, why are you majoring in American literature? You'll never get a job. Why are you majoring in anthropology? You never get a job. Well, I look at my computer science brothers and say, you're not going to get a job either. We'll be unemployed together. The difference is I have been cultivating a sense of being in the world that I find to be of great value to me. I've not been overwhelmed by working on machines. What I'm overwhelmed by, the suffering of the marginalized. I'm overwhelmed by the trauma that exists in this world. These are the fundamental questions and the problems. So if you hear a college president, you will hear them go through the laundry list of what might be the crises of the modern university. Funding, student retention. And I'm saying that part of the funding comes by way of people believing that what you're doing is something other people can't do. For example, how did we come to a point where the schools that are considered the most elite non-black schools in the country don't offer certain majors? That's quite interesting. So if you were to go to Williams College, which is the #1 ranked white school in the country, as they love to call Spelman the #1 black school in the country, the #1 white school in the country is Williams College. It goes between them and Swarthmore and Amherst. They don't have business majors at these schools. None of them do. So I tell people, we have to be careful why they won't do this. What's going on? And my response is because they understand what I'm saying we need to do. They're focusing on creating, cultivating a certain way of being in the world that serves the purpose of humanity above that of the mighty dollar. So our colleges and universities, we have to pull back. We can chew gum and walk at the same time. I'm not saying that you can't major in finance, but you should not do this to the diminution or the destruction of the humanistic studies, of the social sciences, of the natural sciences. I can't begin to tell you how many students I have who are afraid of math, afraid of physics, afraid of biology, not because of intellectual prowess, but because they've been constituted this way, which leads me to a brief turn. High school is where we have to start, if not earlier. We have to ask ourselves, what are our schools doing such that they produce the type of student who would respect black intelligence enough to invest in a historically black college or university? I find too many students who don't invest in black intelligence. So a student who didn't attend a historically black college, as I said earlier on, has a rationalization about, well, I didn't go there because, and they have a tendency not to be able to say, I didn't think they could teach me. I didn't think I'd be good enough if I did not attend this other school. This is a problem. How do we get people to invest? And, as I've often heard said, the scream is coming from inside and outside the house. Inside the house, alumni. You give nothing. You give nothing. Spelman has the highest return on alumni or alumni giving, as well they should. But then, look at the next 30 schools, 40 schools. Some of them are giving at a 15% rate, 10% rate, 35%, and you attended the school. I'm making an argument about those on the outside, respecting the institutions enough that they would attend our institutions. But I'm saying part of the fundamental paradox here is that the screaming and the hollering is coming from inside. To whom much is given? Well, we gave you 4 years. We protected you, as we said, right? We gave you an environment to engage other minds similar to yours. We put you in a situation where you were employable. We did all of the things that you said you needed and that we promised you. But yet and still, you give nothing. Not even $5 a month. And I'll briefly say this. See, part of the thing is we don't educate our students nor our alumni well enough to understand what keeps this machine going. So if you're at Tennessee State, you know what keeps the machine going? Not the amount of money you give, that you give. The numbers of individuals who contribute is much more important than the amount you give. People would like to give to your school knowing their alumni believe in the mission, so I believe in the mission too. But when your school is giving 15%, 20%, that's not going to alert anyone of the value of your institution. So that is screaming from inside. How can I get those to whom I have given so much to believe in what we've told the world about ourselves? We consistently tell the world about the value of HBCUs, how great they are. Yes, they are great. But we have to demonstrate this through material as well. But back to the failure to somehow believe in the power of black intelligence to do for you what you think you need. I often have a problem when at our own schools, we'll invite someone from the outside and they will give a biography of the person and they'll mention that he or she may have attended this white institution, that white institution, and depending on the institution, students immediately defer to them because they went to this school. Oh, wow, they must be smart. But on the contrary, if they were introduced as he went to Tuskegee for college and got his PhD from Howard, the students will actually think they're smarter than he or she is. They really will. They will literally not pay attention because they have not, quote unquote, been legitimized by the structures. This is what I mean by a lack of respect for black intelligence. Where does this come from? And as I said, it has to start somewhere, if not high school, maybe middle school. I don't know exactly where, but we have to pinpoint this. Because as the numbers are projected to diminish, not just about black folk graduating high school, but about high school graduations up to, I think I looked up, 2032, they will begin to diminish. This past year was one of the largest graduating high school classes in history. But now we're going to have to figure out how do we get the paucity of potential students to consider HBCUs? What do we do? What else do we say other than it's a comfort zone? It's safe for him. We have to do more than that. I believe we're going to have to talk more directly about how we help create better people. Look at our politics today. Where do we believe someone would learn about the evaluation and the analysis of political structures, if not in our institutions? When we ask questions about how is it that we've come to a point where people don't maintain the integrity of interlocutors? How do we learn this? See, this is a big point for me because we will spend time and money on cultivating the natural sciences. You could probably name 4, 5, 6, 7 summer programs that focus on STEM. How many programs in the summer can you go and learn to write a poem? Why is a poem so important? Because the ability to produce a poem is one of the most unique things that the Homo sapien can do, unlike all other animals. A poem extracts from life what we took for granted, what we overlooked, and it tries to place us in imagination and possibility. It tells us something about being human that you may have never wrestled with. It forces you to say to yourself, never imagined it. So where do you go to learn this? I don't know of any programs. Where does a little girl go to learn that she is intelligent and she may or may not be beautiful, but her beauty is emanated from within? Where does this come from? We allow serendipity to be the guide of our education. We don't do this on purpose. We're not intentional about this. So what do? How do you get a job? Is that going to get you a job? And I'm saying the job isn't the problem. Who explains what's going on in the Sudan? Who's going to make sense of the Congo? Where do you think your children will learn this? It has to be under the very structure of the humanities, the social sciences, because we spend our days and our nights and our weeks and our years focusing on how might we be better people. And similar to Aristotle, I think if we fundamentally worked on being better people, better individuals make better people. We have to do this. And it can't be by accident. So, historically black colleges and universities, where do? You go back. I read a quote from Du Bois that was 1903. And it still seems to be as pertinent now as it was then. Du Bois goes on and on in this essay about the fear of society with respect to educating black people. And you've heard this rhetorically before. There was a time when we would be killed for reading. Now we have to kill you to read. This is ridiculous. And I'm saying these are the charges of black folk at black schools. Your responsibility is to make sure these brothers and sisters exit here with a stronger value in themselves, love themselves. It is horrible to see the hate that we have for ourselves, the things we say to each other, the things we do to each other. And I won't even get into the language we use to somehow describe each other. I always tell parents, if your son comes to Morehouse, he will never be niggerized, ever. No one will ever think that he doesn't have a right to be a human being at Morehouse. Now, we might question his academic prowess because he didn't focus, but we will never question his ontological status. He has a right to exist in the way that he chooses. And I know Spelman does the same because both my daughters attended that institution. They were overwhelmed by it every day, right? They have a wonderful course. And every Morehouse man knows the course that does it. What's the course? ADW, Africa Diaspora in the World, one of the greatest courses in the history of humanity, where these sisters, they buckle up, bed down in some of the greatest ideas that black women have produced in history. So I do appreciate that happening, that Spelman is exemplary in that regard, because they understand these are black women. Start them off. Make them love each other. Make them learn to love themselves. Let them see that they have a place in the world. They've already been marginalized by black men as well, and that we're going to do our best to at least introduce them to the possibilities of cultivating a reality that they could respect, that they would love to live within. This has to permeate all institutions. Right now, Spelman College is the highest ranked historically black college in the liberal arts rankings. 37. If sexism and racism hadn't been so pronounced, they probably would have been in the top 10. But be that as it may, they're 37. And so I tell students all the time, every historically black college and university is invested in Spelman. We all pray for Spelman to do well, because if they don't, what fallacy will happen? If they don't, do well. No black person is smart. No black person is worthy of education. Is it fair? No. But it is the case. Those of you about my age, you know this happens. If you fail at work, it's not you, it's every black person. If Spelman fails, well, it's not just them, it's all black schools. I celebrate the fact every year they move up, move up, move up. I'm just wondering what rationality they use for not having Spelman even higher. It's a beautiful, godly school. And so I'm trying to impress on our historically black colleges and universities, these presidents, I understand you got to raise money. I understand you might negotiate certain social positions in order to make money. And that, I'll just briefly say, that is a very unique maneuver. How do you take money from certain institutions that you find inconsistent with the plight and aim and aspirations of your institution? I don't have an answer, but it's a difficult one. And it's been a perennial problem for historically black colleges. It's for Margaret Mitchell giving money to Morehouse. Lerone Bennett was quite upset about that. He told Mays, no, don't take it. Difficult decision. But these are the types of conversations that need to be had by all historically black colleges. From whom would we not take any money? If we were to take money, are there conditions that I can set forth? What happens when someone offers you money and they're inconsistent? And so what do we do now? We have to set a platform that says, historically black colleges and universities, we're going to invest in ourselves. We're going to teach who we are. We're not going to shy away from admitting to the public that we love ourselves. Because think about it this way. We spend more times talking about the oldest school in the country, Cheney, the best university, whether or not it's Howard University, that is. And I'm saying to myself, what would constitute an argument amongst a people about which school services its people best? Because each school has its own value. So this is my projection for the future of HBCUs. Everybody needs to buckle down and focus on something and do that well. I want depth over certain breadth. I want more depth. Are you teaching your students literature? How many literature courses are they taking? How many religion courses are they taking? No one should be allowed to major in political science without studying religion. That's impossible. Just think about it. Where are you going in the world as a political thinker and not understand how religion functions? I don't know where you're going. Even if it's in a communist state, there's an argument to be made about how their world is constituted that counters a particular religious perspective. Ask your children, ask your friend, do you know anything about Buddhism? Why is Tibet Tibet? What investment does China have? What are they trying to say about Buddhism? Where does Buddhism begin? Oh, it comes from China. No. You never studied any religions in India? Do you know anything about a Hasidic Jew? No, you don't. And it hit me when I was a student at Morehouse when I was speaking to a friend of mine who was a Muslim, and his wife was with him, and I shook his hand, and I reached out to her. Socially, I wasn't supposed to do that, but I didn't know. I was blissfully ignorant. And it taught me a lesson that I carry with me to this day. It was on me to understand that was a possibility. That was my fault. So how, again, do we cultivate these sensibilities? We have to be intentional about our instruction. Our pedagogy has to be intentional. The subject matter has to be intentional. Tuskegee does a great job at veterinary medicine. We should say that's where you go. Spelman, again, exemplary in the humanities and social sciences. That's where you go. We're going to have to force ourselves to admit our shortcomings. I would even ask you all as we move forward to questions, should we close some schools or should some schools be closed? We have approximately 107 historically black colleges and universities. I would challenge people to think very clearly about how is it that we maximize the product of our education by downsizing not the actual school, but conflating. What would it mean for, well, I'm not going to mention certain schools because I know people will be offended, but if we were in Tennessee and some schools came together to benefit one another, That seems to be a good plan. Here in Atlanta, in the state of Georgia, before we lose, why don't we win? There are so many schools that are in dire straits, and I know they've been fighting for years. But at some point, those of you who know finance much better than I do, if they lose it, we lose everything. Not just the money, we lose everything. The physical plant, the land. Those of you from Atlanta will remember that Clark University, now Clark Atlanta University, used to be over where Carver High School is. They had beautiful rolling lawns. It was a wonderful place. Now, we know why they came over to Atlanta University. John Hope, first black president of Morehouse, fourth president, had a brilliant idea of combining all the schools under the rubric of Atlanta University, and it would have been structured similar to that of the British system. University of London, Oxford, Cambridge, where you would have applied to Atlanta University and you would have attended one of the respective schools. Because why? Because of the depth at which they engaged a particular discipline or disciplines. Morris Brown used to have one of the best business programs in the city. College. Clark Atlanta University had library science gone. It was one of the best library science programs in the country. What I am accounting for is how long do we continue to rehearse? We used to, without us intentionally saying, what do we want to have at our institution? And then, this is the scary part, refer them to the other school that does it better. If we wish to survive, because one thing about historical black colleges and universities, we use it as if it's a singular element. We even talk about higher education in the same way, as if this is some clear notion of what is not clear at all. So I want our schools to take it upon themselves to direct their futures that they select versus the one they must be given to because they have no alternative. How do we fight for our institutions knowing that sometimes we have to say, okay, I acquiesce. Let's come together. And it seems like this has been something that we've understood. I think we're more afraid to do it. Which schools are closed? I'm not going to say which. I'm asking the institutions themselves to say, have you done an evaluation of your resources, projected outcomes? Remember, the number of high school students, black, white, or otherwise, will recede in the next 10 years. It may go back up. But how do you sustain yourself for the next 10 years when first and foremost, as I said, you have so few people who respect black intelligence? So they won't select your school, not because your school isn't good, because they don't think the black school can do it for them. They want to live in the quote unquote real world. Then you have to ask yourself whether or not you have the financial wherewithal to sustain this institution through these changes, these social changes. And as we know now, think about it. The Parent Plus loan has just been limited to $20,000 a year, 64 for 4 years. That's it. It caps. What are we going to do? And I'll make a critique of some of my upper middle class brothers and sisters. You wanted to be a member of this class, but you don't want to pay as other members of that class pay. So think about it. The most elite schools in this country, when they offer free tuition, is up to $200,000 a year. Some of my brothers who attended school with me make $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 easily. But they'll come to Morehouse and say, well, you know, he got a full ride at X university. And I'm saying, I thought this is what you wanted to be about. Because if your son had got accepted to Amherst or Pomona or Princeton, you would have paid because you can't get free tuition. You make too much. You would have sent him without a problem. But you come to us, you go to Spelman, you go to Howard, you go to Hampton and say, oh, the tuition's too high. Do you all realize that the elite schools I'm referencing here cost $69,000 a year minimum? That's just tuition, not room and board. Our entire package is $52,000. The entire room, board, recess, everything is $52,000. And so when I hear people saying, well, it's just too expensive, no, it's not. You're not willing to pay for your child's soul because you're going to negotiate that. You're going to say, well, I know it's not Morehouse, I know it's not FAMU, but I'd rather them get a full ride. And I'm a good Southerner where we understand what? Everything free ain't free. And so how do I get you all, compel our historically black colleges to invest in themselves first, be honest with themselves, to recognize the limitations, and within these limitations make the best choices. We talk about shared governance. You don't get to share the governance until you start paying as an alumnus, as an alumna. That's the investment. You don't just get to say, well, they didn't tell me this. I got some classmates, and I'll be honest with you, they were complaining about costs of certain events. And I tried my best to stay out of their argument because they were trying to rationalize reasons they didn't give. And those of you who attended historically black college, you'll recognize this. Oh, remember when we were students? I was a freshman 40 years ago. These guys are still referencing not getting something in the cafeteria 40 years ago as a reason they gave for not contributing. And I sat there as long as I could before I went in to say, first of all, you need intervention. You need counseling. Because if not getting another piece of chicken overwhelms your soul to the degree to which this is part of your argument for not contributing to your respective HBCU, there's a problem here. On the other side, as we all know, if you would like to see changes, invest so you can have a voice. Our schools need our support. We've done well recently in the media. You've seen we've received a lot of funding, right? Multiple people have decided. That's wonderful, but we should not be dependent on those dollars. We have to be self-sufficient. To be self-sufficient means you get to dictate your curriculum. To be self-sufficient means you get to decide how you constitute. So if we wanted international students, if we wanted more of a particular group from a particular area of the country, we decide that. And if we don't do this, the decision will be made for us. So I guess this will be a good point that we can have a conversation about things that I've said. Hopefully I've upset you so you can ask the best question. I knew he had the first one, of course. Shelby, how are you?
Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Mitchell Shelby, a proud alumni of Tennessee State University, MBA from Clark Atlanta University, and also a continuing education program from Meharry Medical School in Nashville, Tennessee. I guess, Dr. Illya Davis, I do have a daughter who's a junior, senior at Tennessee State University. And we're one of those universities that have come under some serious financial constraints because of one of the things that Dr. Davis has talked about is the lack of giving and the state not contributing their portion of what they say. But my question, I guess I'm asking you is, you're dealing with kids today when they can go to a UGA, what's the school? Kennesaw State University, and they see the bells and whistles of those universities, the new this, the new that, the big football stadiums and things of that nature. How do you combat some of that with kids who didn't have some of the same struggles that you and I felt, or especially people who were graduating in the 60s and the 70s, who really couldn't go anywhere else? They were required, if they wanted continuing education, they were almost required to go to historically black universities. So how do you combat that and how do you combat that, and how do you combat also when education is, as you continually say, is not as perceived to be as good coming from our universities and things of that nature too? How do you continually combat that as a parent and as someone who is recruiting for that university?
Thank you. I intimated some of the issues or responses early on, and this can't be taken lightly. We are going to have to figure out a way to imbue in these young brothers and sisters, and probably more importantly, their parents, that it's okay. I mean, it sounds a little armchair psychology-like, but you don't know how many parents, they really aren't comfortable. I've seen people who are ostensibly upset when their child selects a black school. I mean, yes, yes.
One more thing about that. He is 100% correct. Those that don't know, I play piano. My piano instructor's grandson went to the University of Chicago, didn't get in. Stanford didn't get in. Columbia didn't get in. Some of the finest institutions that we think. He was so upset that he had to end up going to North Carolina A&T. Oh my God!
As a consolation prize.
Consolation prize going to North Carolina A&T. So he got a chip on his shoulder, Dr. Davis. He goes there, first semester chemical engineering 4.0, second semester 4.0, internship 4.0, internship. He graduates from that little old bitty North Carolina A&T and ended up working for one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies. He was one of the 15 engineers that they hired from around the country from that little old bitty North Carolina A&T, you know. And also, could you please talk about that when you see other universities who are doing something a little bit better than you're doing it? Because I recruit for my university, and my top students in engineering, electrical engineering, chemical engineering, and we have an engineering program.
Of course, of course.
I really refer them to North Carolina A&T.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I have no problem with that.
And it pains me to do that.
Yeah, I know.
But, you know.
The only time we don't do this with fraternities, but otherwise, I have some of the most brilliant students in the world. All my students are better than I am. That's not even a question. The difficulty is they're too lazy to actualize it. Yes. Right? That's the problem. So the talent is there. It's nascent. And again, people have really not spoken about HBCUs about our curriculum has to represent this. For example, our class time too short. We have 50-minute classes. No, we need more time. I teach critical thinking. My God, that should be a year, not a semester. I mean, we have to, that's what I meant by being honest and going deeper than broader. Some things need to be deep. Quantitative skill, writing school, critical analysis skills. Those have to be honed in such a way that you become a lifelong learner, that you now continue. Classes are beginnings. They're not hermetically sealed, like you learn it and then I'm done. No. And what we're going to have to do is create that type of intellectual environment. So when you have someone who says, I can go to UGA football team, okay, fine. And I've even had somebody to go to LSU because he liked the colors. Seriously, he liked the colors. His mother, I said, he's coming to Morehouse. We did a visit. She said he likes those colors. And I stopped talking to her because I'm thinking, this is my point about sometimes it is the parent. And I always say it facetiously, you forced him to eat his veggies, but you're going to let him choose college? Like, of all the decisions in the world, you made him eat those green peas. He couldn't go to bed until he ate those green peas. But baby, make one of the biggest decisions of your lives, go right ahead. Huh? And so I tell them, I believe that the import of where your child attends college is one of the two most significant decisions of his life. And if you allow him to negotiate things external to his cultivation, that is the football team, the buildings, the swimming pool, that's external. What about your child's soul? What are you saying to him or her? Putting them in an environment that you know is not normally conducive. And I've had a student who did that in high school. Shelby, this dude came to me and said, after freshman orientation, we used to call it now new student orientation, I do not lie to you when I tell you, he said, can you teach me how to be black? And I'm thinking, what? And he was serious. So I'm saying, okay, you're coming to Morehouse, and I have to tell parents, whatever you did to him in 18 years, we can't fix it. We'll hopefully put him on a track that will help him come to some conclusions and cultivation. But I'm thinking, what about if he had gone, and he says it to this day, what if I had gone from my high school to another environment similar to high school? Of his own assertion, he said, I would have been worse off. So as a freshman in his first semester, every time I see him, he said, I'm so glad I came here. This helped me because I didn't know how to be black. And I had to tell him, there is no way. It's whatever way you decide. But you should not be encumbered by trying to satisfy the wishes and the desires of an external factor like other folk who ain't like you, telling you you're not being a good black person, which is what they used to say to him. Right? So there is no answer to give parents who have that predisposition of assuming that white water is wetter than black. That's been going on since you and I were children. So how do we now convince them, again, black intelligence is equal to? This is what Du Bois does in Souls of Black Folk, doesn't he? His point is, it's not to say better or worse. The idea here is we're as good. You're as good. I don't have to create an asymmetrical intellectual structure. As good. So how do you tell somebody going to Tennessee State, major in engineering, you'll be as good? Well, I got accepted to Georgia Tech. I think I'll go there. I always tell students this. When you go and get these rankings and when you go and get the details from the school, don't ask them how well they've placed and done in engineering. Ask them, is there another kid at your school who matches my demographics and has done well? That's different. So you're a little black girl. You don't get to say, how well have students done in engineering general? No. Find somebody else from your background, financially, socially. Where is that? I want to talk to that young lady. I want to talk to that young man. And have them, through tears, tell me, I've done well, but it's been hard. I did a talk at a predominantly white elite school, and I went there because they created a cartoon that was caricaturing black people. And as I'm talking to them, black young lady jumps up, and she just had her moment. I'm sick of you all. You touch my hair. You ask me about being black. And then another black young lady stands up and tells her, why don't you just transfer? If you don't like it here, leave. And then we had this implosion, right? And my point is, never in my life as a student did I argue for more black professors, a black student union. Where do I fit? Is this my school? Never had that. And this doesn't discount, people can attend other schools, of course you can. The problem I'm having is the reason you decided to go to other school is a diminution of my value. I'm not as good. That's the problem I have. So I don't know what I could say to somebody if they already question the legitimacy of my intelligence. How do I correct that? Right? Somebody meets you as smart as you are, it's like, I just don't think he is smart. Why? Have you talked to him? No, but he's black. So I don't know what to do. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, so my name is Shakia. I'm very happy to hear what you're having to say, and I totally agree. You're 100% right across the board. I'm one of those parents where when you know better, you do better. So, small background. My older children were raised overseas for about 8.5 years, so there was no predominance of anyone. So by the time we moved to Georgia, one of the first things they said to me was, I don't think I'm black enough to go to school here. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't because I shied away from teaching them blackness. It just, our environment wasn't like here, where you had to take a stand and make sure, son, you're a black man in America. Daughter, you're a black woman in America. So fast forward. My oldest son was recognized by a white teacher for his intelligence and was promoted from 1st to 2nd grade. Most of the peers that he had were not black. Fast forward to time for college. He ends up going to KSU. And it was because he had a scholarship. Mm-hmm. I now have 2 younger ones. One graduates this year. She was accepted to Jackson and Payne. And between the time that my oldest son was matriculating through school to her, I just kept planting the seed because I started to know better. HBCU is the way to go. First, you're going to college. Mm-hmm. HBCU is the way to go. So my question is, my youngest, 16, straight A student, really good kid, where are the programs that I can point him to while I still have his heart, while he still loves his mom, mm-hmm. and he listens, to make sure he gets encouraged and mentored to go to an HBCU and wants that, black male influence. Because as a single mom, I know my role is to, surround them or introduce them, because I'm not a man. I can't teach them how to be a man. I can teach my children how to be adults. He's going to be a man anyway. but the kind of character he has, I'm responsible for that. So what does your school or what programs, where can I immediately turn him so that he can be another HBCU graduate?
Gotcha. Well, I would, first of all, submit to you, the greatest example he has is you. I was reared by my mother, 6 of us in the house, drove her crazy.
Same.
Oh yeah, drove her crazy. What he's going to have to learn is he first has to admit he's sexist and submit to the idea that your brilliance is as brilliant as any other man. So I'm not one who says a man has to know. You are doing exactly what's needed, because I fear him being in the presence of a certain man who doesn't have a certain view of the world that might lead him in a particular way that you don't want. So I'm more interested in who teaches than what gender teaches.
Okay.
Yeah, I trust you. Trust me. I do. I know. Yeah, so that's the first thing. Morehouse has summer programs, but I wouldn't reduce it to that. I think that we have to be intentional about demonstrating and teaching love for self, because I think that that overwhelms them, where loving oneself, particularly black children, will be what I'm asking, because it's difficult to undermine who you are when you love yourself the way that's needed. Like you really, really, really do. Like these 3 right here, they love themselves like no one else. They do. And it's not a matter of narcissism, it's a matter of I trust myself. I believe in myself. Even when I fail, there's tomorrow. And I'm thinking these are the lessons that we have to offer, because we don't get it. I have students who will come and literally leave Morehouse because he said it was too black. You see what I'm saying? So you didn't have enough love for your black. You feel me? And so it's not there isn't a panacea for this. It's a you keep doing what you're doing. It's a how do you imbue him with a sense of self and love, such that if he never saw another black man, he still knows Morehouse, he still knows Howard are valuable choices. Because I don't know where they go to school. You probably put them in school, your best choice you can make. So what if he is the only black kid? I've seen that happen through myself. When I was in graduate school, with the exception of maybe 2 classes, I was always the only black person in those classes. If I didn't say to Illya Davis, you see what I'm saying? You're good, you're worthy, you're good, I would have quit, right? Professors not acknowledging my presence. I had a professor in graduate school, I wore my Morehouse hat to every class I took. When one day, for some reason, I took it off, might have been hot. He walked past me in the hallway, and I said, how you doing? Oh, he didn't recognize me without the hat. What does that mean? It wasn't me he saw. I was the brown object in the room that he always expected to see. Because he told me, you missed class. I missed 1 class. I used to tell my white friends, like, y'all can miss class every day. They would never know it. There's 500 of you all up in here. The little black guy's not there on the front row. Something's not right. And all of this, anecdotally, the point is, I want him to feel so secure in who he is that he will invest in himself by looking at HBCUs. I mean, that's the reason why people should be going to HBC. I love me. I want to be around things that exemplify the best of who I could be. Well, people say, well, all black people aren't the same. No, we aren't. But there are some organizing principles that bring us together. There is a tent under which we can fit, and we know what it is. In the same way that my Jewish brothers and sisters can do it at Brandeis, Yeshiva, and my Catholic brothers can go to Notre Dame and Georgetown. Nobody says, why do you have to go there? Shouldn't you expand your horizons? You're a Catholic. Yeah. All right. I want your son, if I may, I want him to believe so deeply in his abilities that I don't care with whom he is now matriculating. He is going to say, I want to do more of what I see in myself, and I want to have that constantly interrogated, particularly my presuppositions about what's right, wrong, good, and bad. So Morehouse has some programs. Maybe I can refer you to some other ones in the city, but we had more prior to 2020. Yeah, we had multiple. And after 2020, I'm sure everybody can account for the fact that so many programs just went away because of COVID. People weren't on campus anymore. But I'll look them up if you're still here, and I can show you what we do have in the summer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Davis.
All you have to do. Eat.
All the things you've said have sort of just hit directly home with us, because all of us in here are black, and most of us are HBCU grads. And I use that term lightly because when I was in school, there was no term, there was no brand called HBCU. It was called Black College.
Yeah, it was 1965, yep.
I'm 1976 graduate of Elizabeth City State University, and so is my wife, a 1978 grad of Elizabeth City State University. My daughters are HBCU students as well, graduates of Bowie and St. Augustine's. My mom is a graduate of Norfolk State.
Whoa.
So, the culture is what I want to speak to, is the culture. You said two things that really struck me earlier. You said the university presidents is in funding and retention. And that's all you hear. Mm-hmm. I just left my homecoming this past weekend. And I heard that speech over and over. But for me, no one that knows my wife, everyone that knows my wife and I know exactly what school we graduated from. It's never a guess. After a few minutes of conversation, it leads to a black college, HBCU, they know exactly where we went to school. Now, with me, I understand, I heard the term Mr. Shelby used, he said that small, tiny university called North Carolina A&T. Well, there's universities that are smaller. And what bothers me among some of my peers and colleagues is we have made ourselves, no reflection on what Mr. Shelby said, because he's absolutely correct.
Of course.
Oh, you went to that large black college. Oh, and you went to that little one. And oh, we used to beat you guys to death. And it's so forth. Well, we have to understand that everybody is not Morehouse. We love Morehouse. We love Spelman. We use them as icons and examples of what we want our students to do around the country. So I say, the culture, and it comes from home. I knew that I was going to a black college. Mm-hmm. There was never a question. I told my mom after graduating, I grew up in New York and Jamaica, Queens, and I said, I need to take a break from this heavy high school thing. And she said, well, go ahead. Break as long as you want. You can go down south and stay with your grandparents for a month or so, but you will go to black college. And there I went. Mm-hmm. 4 years and out. But the thing is, I've heard people too say, and I've teach a lot of kids and taught a lot of basketball and coach different sports. And I said, wow, your son, you went to Tennessee State? Yes. I know you can't wait for little Johnny to go, oh, of course not. He's going to go to Vanderbilt.
Yep.
Oh, is that so? So where is he going to go to homecoming? Oh, it's Tennessee State. So we as parents have to instill that culture from day one. From the time, you don't have to go to an HBCU, mm-hmm. but you should have them knowing the difference.
Yes.
The culture. I could have gone to any university. I am so glad. That's why we have that song amongst HBCUs. I'm so glad I went to.
Yes.
It's across the board. We just changed the name, but the song stays the same. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate you coming. I wish we had a larger audience because you have hit on some topics and subjects that hit right home, right into our, and even in our own homes. We were fortunate. Our children didn't have that question and didn't have that choice. Only because we grew up not overseas. We grew up in a culture where it was expected. Grandparents taught it. They may not have gone to that school, but they supported that mm-hmm. school. So we have to make sure our young ones understand the importance of supporting these schools. For instance, I still praise my university. ECSU has one of the few aviation programs in the country and one of the only ones in black college. 22 airplanes and 2 simulators. Now, how many people in this room know that? Not many. Mm-hmm. But if you speak with me for a couple of moments, I will tell you we do more than football, basketball, baseball. I can tell you what we do. And I tell all of my colleagues, and especially my coaches in college, when they complain about the wins and the losses, and I said to the coach not long ago, it's not the W's and the L's, coach. It's the culture. Mm-hmm. You must change. You have a losing culture. All of your players have a losing culture. I said, you may not believe this, but go outside of the university campus and ask the residents there, Well, Morehouse is playing a game tomorrow at 1 o'clock. You think they're going to win? Nah, I don't think so.
Yes,
Losing culture.
yes.
I said, you don't think that's, go on campus and ask the students, the new students who don't attend anything but their dormitory rooms and PlayStation. The students now don't go to athletic events. You know that, right? The stadium's
they won't.
empty.
No.
It's why? I go right here. So I said, ask a student. Morehouse is playing tomorrow at 1 o'clock. You think they're going to win? Nah, I don't think so. I said, now, to solidify what I just told you, ask one of your players, do you think we're going to win tomorrow? I don't know. The culture is bad. So, again, not to prolong this issue, I have a million things I'd like to ask you, but I can't formalize them right now. But I do appreciate what you're saying, because I said in the first 2 or 3 minutes, I said to myself, oh, this is going to be long. Oh, this is not going to work for me. But as I said here, and had you hit on certain topics and the questions and statements being made by some of our colleagues here, you are indeed the product of an HBCU.
Oh, well, thank you. That's the highest honor. Yes, sir.
It exudes. And the way you speak and the way you let us know where we are gives me the ammunition to continue the battle, to continue to go on the yard, to continue to support my fellow HBCUs, and to educate and help those young men and women see the light. No, you don't have to go to one. Mm-hmm. That's not necessary. But like Mr. Shelby just said, you can compete on any level. The advantage that you may have, that you can be diverse.
Yes.
See, you can compete academically with anybody at anybody's school, but they cannot be diverse like you. They cannot come from the Stanford and go to Morehouse and accelerate. We can do both. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, we have to be diverse, but we always have to remain black.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. And I would even add, one of the things that we often have problems with internally is how people's expectations of our historically black college are unrealistic. So I always tell students, be very careful how you weigh us, because oftentimes it's predicated on a very personal experience. Well, the food, the dorms. So those of you who've been in Atlanta for the last 10 years, I won't mention these schools, but 2 of the major universities in this state had mold and roaches and rats. It was a story for a minute, went away. Let one of the Negro colleges have that problem. All the students, see, black folks, stop, whoa, don't, no. That's a low self-image for you to decide that you're going to evaluate us in ways you didn't evaluate the dominant structure. I mean, it is amazing how many students I'll get, see how black folk, no, I don't. I don't see how black folk, because the problem is you're black, but you failed to invest in yourself such that you become the exemplary case and everyone else is an anomaly. See, that's what we do. That's what we do in organizations. People say, well, somebody in your organization, your school. I said, no, I'm the exemplar. And that's what I love about being at Morehouse. My brothers here went to Morehouse. All of us have our own Morehouse. There is no singular way. The Morehouse man is any Morehouse person you meet. We all Morehouse, right? What binds us is our ability to invest intellectually, culturally, as you said, in that subculture. But we're going to have to, and I appreciate your point about the sports. It's an analog to the intellectual environment. We still have students who don't trust our intellectual gifts, right? They will walk around campus with other university sweatshirts. I said, who at the school wearing a Morehouse sweatshirt? Well, I don't know. I said, but you're not getting it. It's an ideology. One philosopher, Zizek, and I like this notion of ideology should be understood as perspective is true. Do you understand that? So that's what an ideology is. Everything from Marxism to capitalism, the ideology is we're true. We're right. Do you understand that? And for you to walk around, and I'll just use Harvard as an example, I said, that's cute. But when I visit, they're not wearing Morehouse sweatshirts. You're creating a perspective, a worldview. And so now I had a student who was an SGA president 15 years ago. Where are you going to grad school? I'm going to Harvard. I said, why? I just think it's perfect. I said, name me one professor you'll work with. Well, I'm not really. I said, don't talk to me again. I'm not saying you shouldn't go to Harvard. Do you understand this? You gave it a benefit of the doubt in ways that I say, oh, you want to do a degree in political science? Ron Walters at the time was at Howard. If y'all don't know him, you need to. He was a beast. He left Howard and went down to University of Maryland. But the point is, I try to encourage students, wherever you think you're going to go, have a reason. You don't reject black colleges because you falsely assumed. You can go to, I have no problem with you choosing another type of school, but you do not dismiss us for some presupposition that's unfounded and an overgeneralization because you met the wrong alumnus. Because I can show you some alumni from that other school, they don't think you're human. But you'll let that get by, right? Oh, well, it's just that teacher. No. Last anecdote, I won't mention the school. At one school I attended, they have what we call a shopping period. So the first week, you get to just run around campus taking multiple classes to see which one you want to take, which one you want to enroll in. Another Morehouse brother and myself, we rushed to this class on Western intellectual traditions. We ran to the class, the professor stopped at the door and did this. Yes. We said, excuse me, we trying to get in? He's like, no, you can't come in here. Huh? He said, no. We said, it's reading period. Where are you all from? We're students here. What department? This is what I tell my students. This is the street quiz you'll get. It's always a street quiz. Your legitimacy has to be demonstrated, not assumed. So he takes us through a list of things. We said, shopping. He goes, oh, no. This class has been meeting for a week before the semester began. This is the first day of classes. Now, we knew nothing had happened, but we, in our beautiful Morehouse way, you know what we did? We walked up to the president's office, stood at his administrative assistant. We would like to see the president now. We knew he could hear us in the back. Yes. She was like, well, excuse me, gentlemen. I said, no, we want to see him now. And David Bullock, that's my guy. We were just, both of us doing the same thing. Eventually the provost comes running out. Is everything okay? No, it's not. We were treated in very bigoted ways, and we mentioned the professor's name. We told him what class it was. Nothing happened. Which plays to my point. Institutionalized. We had no legitimacy there. But I went to Morehouse, so I was good. I was cool. I didn't come here for you to fortify a sense of who I am. I just want to let you know I caught you. I got you. And don't think I didn't see it. So they talked to the professor and say, whatever, dude. But don't think I'm the kid who went to that other place. No. And this is something that we get from our environments. Dr. Gloria Wade Gales at Spelman told me when I was going to school, she said, Illya, don't go up there teaching them how to be black. If they cared enough, they would have done the work on their own. Yes. And I took that with me. Every time I got upset in the class, I was like, oh, be careful, be careful. They asking you questions about, no, Dr. Gales said, don't teach them. If they want to learn, they'll do it on their own. So I shouldn't be teaching you. We can have a conversation about some black stuff, but that ain't my job to give you that ad. If you wanted to, you should have gone to, I don't know, FAMU or Talladega. Yes, sir.
All right, so I have a question. I can't remember who said it exactly, but you said something along the lines of the greatest learning you'll get is from the students, like amongst themselves.
Oh, my advisor in grad school, yeah.
Right. How do you engage in a space where you're actually the minority? And I say that to be like those who actually care about what they're learning, those who want to engage in what's happening socially, those who go beyond their discipline and learn. How do you engage in a space like that where other individuals that share it with you don't care at all?
Understood. Beautiful example. And I know exactly where you are in the world. One beautiful thing about being, and I'm just going to make a sweeping statement if it applies. The beautiful thing about historically black colleges who produce at a very high weight, or we say punch above our weight metaphorically, is that some of our students come to us not knowing much of anything. Some of our students come as some of the most brilliant people in the world. And the beauty is when they meet. And so I had classmates, so let's go back. The average SAT score for my class was 800. That was out of 1,600, remember that? 800. But we will bust you all's behinds. because we appreciated that education at Morehouse, and we didn't talk about consolation prizes. Well, you know, I could have gone to Stanford, but I came to Morehouse, which is what happens to a lot of black schools now. No, we said we got an opportunity. So my point to you, Junie, is that sometimes it's going to take a level of patience if you care and if they care to cultivate the intellectual life, because they never did it. All I did in high school was play basketball and sing. That was it. That was it. My last year, my mother sent me to a boarding school, and because of my predisposition towards white people, she was teaching me a lesson because it was a white boarding school. And she was like, you're going to learn. So I went, and some things happened, but they had a rule: if you had an A in the class, you didn't have to take a final. And I knew that the white people didn't think much of me, so I got a 4.0. Not because I was competitive, right? I was competitive. So when I came to Morehouse, brothers like this blow me out the water. I never had foreign language, I never had chemistry, I never had physics, none of those courses were offered at my school. I can go down a list we didn't have. So when I came to Morehouse, I was that bottom kid with other students who had done extremely well. But they were patient enough with me to engage in conversations, to listen to me be wrong in public and assist me as I worked through it. But that's for somebody who cares, and I get your point. Some people don't care to cultivate. Maybe they'll get it after the point, but there's no way to force it. It's just a matter of being patient within the venue such that maybe, because right now, somebody's watching you, Junie. Somebody watching. I tell students all the time, somebody's watching you. You may never know. So your responsibility is to always extend yourself in such a way that it's saying, yeah, I'm not ready yet, but maybe one day I'll talk to him. And I know students who they will say, yeah, he's too deep. I can't handle that. That's because they're afraid. They don't believe in themselves. Nobody ever told them they could. So what do? They take the easy route. And I have too many students who say, I'm majoring this just to get out of school. One kid told me, just give me a C. My dad said I get my money if I graduate. Yeah, this is a different world, right? And so there is no single way to address it. What I'm asking you is be as humanely human as you can. Extend yourself, because you're in a discipline that says you're supposed to care. Now, white folk might not define it that way, but I do. To be a philosophy major, I care. I give a damn. That's why I spend my time not just reading and studying to know, but to cultivate a sense of being in the world that other people should be able to relate to. Right? It's not that we learn things that other people don't know. We learn how to say it in ways they couldn't articulate. That's why they say amen, not because I told them something they didn't know. And that's our job. So we talk to students all day, all the time by saying, listen, what do you think about this? And you all know part of the difficulty is we live in a very facile environment where I don't care the most brilliant and the least brilliant, you all do find resonance about some of the most banal, vacuous topics imaginable. Because I've heard them. And I've seen you all engage in these things. Now, I have space for the most trivial as well. I'm not saying every moment got to be serious. But we have to do a better job of creating these subcultures. This is my point about black schools. Where does a black kid at their respective school go to engage in ideas? See, I want every president to say, do I have a place on my campus where if they just wanted to engage in ideas, they go to there? Because I know where they can go to make money. Or they're having a business meeting over there tonight. They're playing computer games over there. But where's I just want to talk about the politics of Haiti. I want to talk about what's actually going on in the Congo. I mean, where is that? Oh, I'm overwhelmed by the feminist author I just read. I just read Audre Lorde's essay. Who's talking about it? And I think we do a poor job, universities, not just black ones, of creating this versus, well, you already like reading. You came to Morehouse. You'll find people like you. Maybe you'll get it done. Maybe you won't. No, we have to be more intentional. So the question is, are you going to extend yourself such that somebody else can luck up and get to know you?
Thank you.
Well, I have a question.
Oh, yes, sir.
So, you know, we've spoke about my son, who is currently at Morehouse, is a freshman, is a philosophy major. He came to that in high school, took a philosophy class, and it was one of the first times. Now, he's always been a very brilliant young man. but he showed no interest in anything. And he was actually excited about the idea of philosophy. So much so when, like I said, he joined the ethics team, the ethics bowl team, and they were successful. And it was an amazing thing to see. He'll get mad for me to say the fruits of my labor.
True.
You know what I mean? So I'm seeing this happening in real time. And the entire time he was in high school, predominantly black and Hispanic school, but he was in a program that was predominantly white. And they made it their business to separate his class from everywhere else. So he knew nobody at school, yet he was supposedly one of the elite students at the school. I stressed trying to introduce, because I felt like he was missing something. You know, yes, he's getting it all at home. I'm not saying we're like the blackest of the black.
No, I got you.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we're doing our part to make sure that he understands what's going on, not only where he's at, but where I'm from, and that's New York, and I grew up in the Bronx. I didn't come from a household that had college graduates in it. My dad dropped out of middle school in 8th grade. My mom graduated from high school. There was no like path. You know, there was no one to kind of guide me. In hindsight, I would probably say, if there were anyone to guide me in this way, I probably would have went to an HBCU. But I didn't have that luxury. I worked my entire time through college. I paid for that out of my own pocket, from undergrad all the way into grad school. But listening to my son, I knew. We put him. I know Shakia asked the question about organizations and groups and whatnot doing things. My son was a part of a group in Cobb County run by the Alphas. He also received a scholarship from another group in Cobb County run by the Kappas. You see what I'm saying? So he started to wake up to these things. My mind said, oh, you're going to an HBCU. Because just looking at him and just realizing, I'm like, man, the world, I always tell him, the world is a very hard place. And this country is very hard on black men and women. I need you to surround yourself, because you mentioned the love. I said, I need you to surround yourself with that kind of love. So, you know, we did the college tours. We went to Dillard. We went all over the place. Xavier, he was in a program at Xavier. But I wanted him to go to Morehouse. He wasn't quite on the same page as I was.
Of course.
And we had gone on an initial tour, then we came back around and did another tour, and it was on the second go where he was like, this is where I want to be. And when he said it, a lot of it was related to the philosophy. I will say this, give you credit, he was excited at the idea of taking a class ran by you.
Oh.
So even to this day, because he just told me he has a schedule for next semester, he said, I'm taking Professor Davis' class. So he's excited.
This is the last time you're going to like me. You're like,
And I noticed that, like, the things that we did growing up with him, just having those conversations, being open to having ideas and not just shutting them down. People would stop us in the street if we were sitting in a restaurant and walk up to us and be like, I just overheard your whole entire conversation. This is amazing that you're having this conversation with your children and they're making great points, right? So I was like, I saw him get take to it. So when he said philosophy, I wasn't mad at him. I was like, I'm not mad at it. Again, of course, as a parent, I'm thinking, well, how are you gonna make some money?
I know it, yeah.
That's always gonna be there. But I know he's exceptional, so he'll find a way. And I know Morehouse will help him find that way. I was curious, and I would like you to speak a little bit more. You touched on it, but you didn't go into depth with the idea of it starts at high school.
Yes.
And my fear is, knowing where he went to high school, I don't know if they're equipped to be that other like guiding, institution outside of the home to get them where they need to be. It doesn't seem, though predominantly black and Hispanic, it doesn't seem like they have an interest in guiding Black and Hispanic children, though they're the majority.
Yeah, our education system is garbage. It's just garbage. And the elites get it. So when I was in graduate school, when I was in graduate school, for example, reading certain texts by Nietzsche, one of my closest friends, is Jewish brother, white guy, we used to be together a lot doing work. He said, yeah, I read this in the 9th grade. Then he read it again in college. And now we're in grad school. I was like, huh? He said, oh, yeah. I did. So, wow. Okay, that was the first moment. The other was when I was trying to go to college, it wasn't a choice that I made. It was forced on me by my elder sister who went to Clark. She was in an honors program in the 70s at Clark, and my mother who didn't graduate high school. And their position was, you're going to Morehouse. So I ended up at this white boarding school, and I'll be honest, don't you all tell anybody else. I grew up in Atlanta, Martin Luther King. Mother said, would you marry a non-Black? Said, of course, Martin Luther King said. She said, okay, yeah, next year you're going to, and then told me to school. I was like, huh? She said, yes, I need you to have some experiences. All my other siblings, my 2 sisters, they went to boarding schools, predominantly white, experiences. The woman was brilliant. She didn't know specifically, but she had a general sense of what was going to happen. So I was supposed to go to Morehouse. And as children are recalcitrant, I said, no, I'm not. So my first year out of high school, I parked cars. Had no college prospects. I applied to Georgia State, got accepted. Back when I was in school, everybody got accepted to Georgia State, right? They did. Just if you're from Atlanta, you go to Georgia State. So I got accepted. She said, under no circumstances will you do this. So came back around. I was waiting on somebody with their car, white guy, comes to the car, opened the door in a very obsequious way. Thank you for coming to the Ritz-Carlton. And he dropped pennies like that in my hand. It was at that moment, that watershed moment, that I knew I would never do this again for my life. I'm going to Morehouse. And so I understand the sensibility when people say, I didn't. That's fine. You, like my mother, still had insight and prescience enough to know your child, which is what I was saying. You know your child. That's more important than anything else. And so the beauty of your story is, without the specifics, you gave him the structure. So philosophy will help facilitate it, but he could have majored in econ. He could have majored in math. But he still would have understood the nature of the structure of what you all were doing. The cultural aspect, because that was a question, right? Culture? In high school, is that we don't respect our children well enough to make it difficult. We want ease. We want them to slide through. And we won't admit it, but we do. Because part of it is we're working out our own pathologies and issues through our children. We date our children. We love them more than anything in the world. This is the type of relationship versus I love you enough for you to get hurt. And we don't do that. And so I say that because to go to a high school and see that your child's not being educated and for you to step in the gap, give my child more. I don't hear this. What's for work? No. That's your homework. Now I got something else for you to do. Now that happened to my elder sister, who's the smartest person in my family. You all remember those Bible books, those blue Bible books that everybody used to have in their house? It was the Bible stories. They were in cartoon. My sister had to read every last one of them. Then after she finished that, she had to read all of the encyclopedias. All of them. You understand this? And that was my mother again. My mother never, no. But her point was, yes, ma'am, you read, you'll do it. The problem with these high schools is the expectations are so low. And I teach a course called Freshman Orientation, and that's all of the freshmen at Morehouse for a year, every Tuesday, 11 o'clock. And without fail, I ask them, was high school easy? Every last hand. That's for the most brilliant and the non-brilliant alike. Yes. Then I'll say, is AP or dual enrollment easy? Raise your hand if you think dual enrollment. Everybody who took it, yes. Easier than AP. You understand this? So everybody's taking the road of least resistance here. And we're not pushing them. We're not making them accountable for themselves. And we've decided, as long as my baby's happy, as long as he looks good, as long as men, women, whomever love him, and I'm saying some of the most superficial indicators versus that child should call you some night crying like, this is so hard, Dad. Like, this is hard. Yeah, that's right. Because part of the lesson is, I'm here for you, but sometimes life is hard. And I'm going to teach you at this point how you keep moving. Because if we don't teach them now, when I'm not here anymore, what happens to my daughters? We haven't cultivated a sense of get back up, keep fighting, don't stop. No, he won't do it for you. He's not here to do it for you. And high school makes it so overwhelmingly simplistic. And we know the numbers, graduation rates, what do y'all call it when you just pass people now? When they just pass kids from class to class, I thought there was a term for it. They don't keep them back like they used to. I was kept back in the second grade. Yeah, so my mother, back in the day, you couldn't retain a kid unless the parents said okay. Yeah, my mother said, yeah, you hold him another year. So I got kept back in the second grade. They said I had behavioral problems. Go figure, right? So they kept me back. But I'm just saying, we negotiated our children's futures for the things that we didn't have. And so because it was hard for us, we decided nothing's going to get in my baby's way, right? And if my baby needs it, I'm going to get it. So I get an email from a parent every day. We is the pronoun they'll say. I'm thinking, in your child in school, we need this. We haven't received that. And I'm thinking, poor guy, because much longer? And he can't be in a relationship because whomever he dates will be dating him and his mother. Or his father. It ain't just mother and his father. So I need to figure out a way to get into these high schools. I worked for a period of a year teaching critical thinking at a charter school. I'm not a charter school fan at all, but I wanted to experiment. And because it was charter school, I was allowed. I taught 6th, 7th graders critical thinking. The same book that I used in Morehouse, I used with them, and they did it because I had no expectations. I didn't say this is difficult. I didn't say I used it at college. There was none. I came in and just taught it, and they learned it. That's the problem. We come in and we impose our presuppositions, our biases. This is very difficult. I don't know how many of you all are going to pass. I'm not sure if you'll understand. Well, you've just done the damage. So your son, with your help, becomes an anomaly because I'm worried about all those other ones that didn't have you. Who's speaking to them at restaurants and coffee shops, forcing them to think beyond the pale, outside the box, whatever metaphor you want to use? That's my fear. And the same way when my daughters went to a school that was supposed to be good, I said things at home I know the other parents weren't saying at home. You're a black woman. I don't give a bleep about what you look like, it's what you do. What do you always say? Beauty starts inside, right? Beauty's a dime a dozen. We got too many pretty folk. I want some kind, caring, loving people, right? Be pretty on your own time. But I need you to be a good person. And that's what we are. Think about, look at for those of you who aren't clear about what I'm intimating here, go and look at the curriculum of Groton Academy. Go look at Phillips Exeter Academy. And then look at your child's curriculum. You're about to see two worlds. I mean, worlds apart. And that should indicate to you, this ain't right. Why is this kid reading Gilgamesh in the 8th grade and your kid can't spell Gilgamesh? I'm telling you, they can't. And I had some students the other day. I said, have you read anything by Shakespeare? No. I said, do you know Beloved? No. Do you know Cornel West? No. Do you understand? I'm thinking, Du Bois wrote Souls of Black Folk in 1903. That was 82 years before we were at Morehouse. I knew that book. Cornell's still alive. You don't know him? I didn't say read him. I said, do you know him? No. What does he do? So I'm trying to figure out what we can do as communities. So Booker T. Washington is down the street from us. I'm trying to get up in there. I want to get up in Booker T. Washington. And they've welcomed me. I just a little slow on the uptake. But I need to get in there. And I would love to do readings with these students. I would love to do whatever I can. Booker T. Washington is our greatest jewel. It's the oldest black school we have. When I was a student, they probably had over 3,000 students at that school. Now they might have 700, 800, I think. And you know what's going to happen when it goes empty. Come on, y'all. They gentrify my neighborhood. Once that school gets to a certain number, it's going to be a takeover, Shelby. You know that. And then that takeover is going to be a flip. Then that flip's going to become a charter. Once they charter it for a while, then they'll take the charter away because then they only needed to be a neighborhood school because the neighborhood is flipped in a way you don't need to call it a charter anymore. All right, so the high school, I'm thinking, I'm not a secondary, that ain't my thing. I can only do college. I don't have the patience to do middle, high school. And the teaching there is extremely godly. Like any elementary, high school, middle school, they're all gods to me. These people will have patience with other people's children that I would never have, ever have, under no circumstances. These people we need. Last thing is this, if we were to pay every teacher a minimum of $150,000 a year, we'd have the best school system in the world. And this is associated, sadly, with the greed I talked about earlier. Because I would get most of our students right now would flip their majors if they know you could teach first grade for $150,000 a year. Do you see what's about to happen? Because you only teach about 4.5 hours. Y'all know that, right? You'd be like, hold up, 150? They would come. So we're losing our most brilliant students to a reductionist utilitarian principle of how much can I make? But you're brilliant. Yeah, but I want to be an engineer. And that's the top salary out of college. 5 areas of engineering. Those are the top 5 paying jobs, right? And so people normally drop past those and become something else because they can't do the math. But that's what I would like to do is try to get into these schools and make those type of changes.
Thank you. When you said the expectations, it made me think when I was in high school, English teacher gave me Hamlet. I took it home, read it over the weekend, came back on Monday, was like, okay, cool, I enjoyed that. He said, well, we're going to read this book the whole semester. I said, oh.
Hey, you read it in a weekend.
I read it in a weekend. I was ready to get to the next book. I was so disappointed. I tell people all the time, I was like, that's what made high school difficult. 'Cause every time they gave me a book, and then he gave me Macbeth, I was like, this going to take the whole semester? Because I read it.
See? Low expectations.
I was like, I'm ready for the next one.
See?
You know? But it was that kind of situation where it was like, no, I have to explain this book to you on a level that's so low. You know, because all the other students were looking at me like, so you read that book? I said, yeah. Did you understand it? I said, eventually, yes. And, you know, did you like it? And I was like, yeah, I did. You know, and so it was one of those things that I look back and when you say about the high school, it does start at high school because I always tell people, I'm like, man, if I just had maybe 4 or 5 decent teachers that cared.
Yes.
They would have saw, oh, he read that book in over the weekend. I gave it to him on Friday. He was done on Monday. Maybe they need to do a little more, but
that's sad.
He wasn't catering to me, so he was catering to everybody else who didn't quite understand. So thank you for that.
Yes, sir. Is that the Bible? Oh, no.
I wrote in it, so yes, it is. Hello, my name is Lyndon Young. Okay. I don't want to be too loud. But hello, my name is Lyndon Young. I'm a senior philosophy major from Columbus, Ohio. I currently attend the college, Morehouse College. Who here has attended or is attending an HBCU? Okay, just trying to get demographics. So I think you kind of touched upon it in your talk a little bit, but I'm going to ask you to expand. And so I'm thinking more of like an internal critique, right? So you asked, what can we as historically black colleges and universities do? And I think that a lot of the time, like being that I was just considering colleges a few years ago, one of the big concerns was that the historically black college and university experience becomes overwhelmed by the cultural experience, right? And so student services and other entities are really selling historically black colleges as homecoming. It becomes a reduction to homecoming concerts, the parties that happen on campuses, fraternities, sororities, and a million other organizations, SGA. And so it gets overwhelmed by all of these like student experiences. And so then you see that the choice becomes academic rigor for those students who are more academically inclined, and concerts or parties, because the institutions themselves have reduced themselves to that because they're following the trend. And so how do we get our institutions to respect us and to respect our academic rigor? But it's not even just that, but like even the departments that our institutions tend to cater towards or advertise are again going back to like money, how much money we can get you hired, we can just push you through and make you a cog. But how do we get our institutions, our administration, our provost's office, our student services to really respect not only the institutions, but also the intelligence and the brilliance of the students that are going to be coming in and the students that are already there?
Great question. Yes, that's. So one thing, and I know this might not settle well, one advantage, well, let's not call it an advantage. Let's talk descriptively. Spelman, again, I'll use an example. They have very, very strong applicants, very, very strong. And that only serves as a point of entry to say, how well did they do in high school? They did very well. How did you do well in high school? And they'll tell you what they did culturally, socially, and so forth. Then you take that student and put them in college. They will consistently engage and be a similar type of student in college. What am I saying? They weren't that social. You understand that? A lot of them weren't. And when Morehouse does, we've been requesting, higher GPAs, whatever, we're getting more students similar to that. So my classmates will say, why don't they go to the sports? One of the reasons is because they never did. Like they just never, that wasn't their thing. Like I got students who, if you put a basketball in their hand, yes. Look at Sterling raising his hand. I'm telling you. So they weren't the sports people. And I'm not saying that we're a monolith, but that creates a community. Unlike ours, we played basketball. Like I said, on a weeknight, Morehouse used to have an outdoor basketball court. I lived off campus and I'd be out there at 2 a.m. playing. Academic, whatever, we'll get that later. So we were constituted differently academically such that you all did academics in high school. I had to learn to do it at Morehouse, right? We were doing everything else and the parties and all the social things you're talking about. One way that students, and we've talked about this before, you all have to take on the responsibility. Why? It's your house. Some people just work at these schools. It's yours. So there's no reason for you to be cursing the darkness oftentimes by saying, we don't have this, we don't have that. Stop. They do listen to students. But to your point, Lyndon, I think you're intimating, some of these students need to be shut down in public with respect to values. So when we are in these SGA meetings or what have you, where are our budding intellectuals to say, how much are you allocating for, a literary society? How much are you allocating for guests? When we were in school, Stokely Carmichael, then Kwame Ture, he would come on a regular basis. We had so many intellectuals that came. Y'all have nothing like this, and we had less money. These people would be rolling through on a weekly basis. We had forums on every issue imaginable. If something happened, we had a forum. You all could do it. For some reason, the people who have the inclination don't do it. Even if 4 people show up, we have to create an environment that's conducive to intellectual exchange. So it might not happen when you were in school, but it was started when you were in school, and it builds and it builds. Because the freshmen will eat anything, like Mikey. I mean, seriously, they don't know better. And you all have heard me say this flippantly, and a little tongue-in-cheek, the worst thing for a freshman is an upperclassman, because you learn what not to do. Upperclassmen don't do that. Oh, you can skip that. Dude, why are you doing that? And I'm like, you dog it. Because they came there, Morehouse, we'll read it. And if you go and do an orientation, we could tell them to say anything. We just tell them to say something. They would do it. They would run if we say run. They would sit down if we say sit down. Right around October, I don't have to go. Yeah, I've been missing class. They've lost the verve, the fever. The fever pitch is now lower. So what I'm saying is we haven't lost them yet, but what would it mean to put on a forum to discuss some fundamental issues of the day? They don't know anything about Palestine. They don't know anything about the Congo. They don't know anything about the Sudan. So instead of criticizing people for not, present it. Do it. Administratively, you all have to push. So say right now, could you get 15 people with you who agree? Right? Because what I often tell students is, if it's a single issue, normally they can rebuff that. And I'm not talking about any particular office, but people rebuff the individual complaint. The issue is there a goodly number of individuals who care such that we would change programs and structures for people, not an individual? Because if it's just an individual, go to your dorm room. Now, you might make an argument, but the reason why I'm by myself is because other people haven't found the environment favorable. Well, that's one argument. But are you just going to keep arguing until you graduate, or are you going to actually engage in activities that will make a change right now? Because it is hard for somebody who cares about reading and cares about ideas to find the proper people. They're at Morehouse. They're there. They're at Spelman. They're at CAU. They're at Morris Brown. They are. But I don't see us advertising on Instagram the same way we do for the parties. I haven't seen one electronic flyer that say, we're reading Autobiography of Malcolm X this time every Wednesday. Come through. Why not? We're reading, I don't know, bell hooks next Friday and all subsequent Fridays at 6 o'clock. We have to be imaginative if we're serious about what we say we're doing. And again, that has nothing to do with the administration. If the administration can chime in, good. I'm a Morehouse man. You're a Morehouse man. You all are Morehouse men. It's ours. We are the guardians of this institution, which means some folk go to work and they go home. Right? Some professors you've never seen in your life, ever. If they told you they worked there, you'd be like, you liar, because they went to work and they went home. So I'm asking you to invest in the future of Morehouse, not so much you, because it might not happen. You two are about to graduate. You left junior. Now, what is he going to do? He's about deuces. Yeah, you have to do this as a matter of, this is my commitment, these are the efforts I want, because, again, future congressmen, future senators, these people fail to have the basic tools I'm arguing for. They lack critical evaluative skills, and analytical skills are few and far between, and then we are baffled by the types of so-called arguments they attempt to make. You're like, that doesn't make any sense anywhere. And what I would like, particularly at our institution, is the cultivation of that. Some of you do debate, fine. But we have 2,500 people at Morehouse. How many people on the debate team? 20? We should have 150. Do you all understand that? That should be 150. And it's not just, it's across the board. And my brother talking about the sports, the same thing. We got brothers at Morehouse who played sport in high school, will never play again in their lives. It's sort of a good feeling, though, because their point is, I'm going to hone in on my academics. Because I always ask parents when they tell me their kid's going to go and play a sport, I say, is he going to the pro? No, he just likes soccer. So you're going to send him to that school to play soccer. He's not even attempting to go professional. That's to your point. We engage in facile activities as if it's a sine qua non, as if it's everything to be. No. Go to Howard. Go to Tougaloo. Go to FAM. Go to Hampton to become a better person. Because I guarantee your son is a philosophy major. I will guarantee you right now in public, any job he wants, he can get. That's a guarantee. people who've been in Atlanta, Robert Shaw, who was the conductor of the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra, was a philosophy and English major in college. Now, he was a white guy and certain advantages. Yeah, we got that. But what I'm saying is he's not foreclosed the possibilities by any major. He doesn't need any particular major to go to medical school. He doesn't need any particular major to go to law school. No. And what we find are students who falsely assume that they know what the prerequisites are. So the intellectual environment that we would like to have, or the students saying they would like to have, all of this is a part of it. Now I can pull in a biology major to read Malcolm X, because I'm trying to tell him this is a part and parcel of what it means to be educated, to do these types of things. And I think in our class, we had students like that, biology majors. We used to challenge each other. What is the most difficult class in your major? I'll take it, and you take the most difficult class in our major, and see how you come out. Right? They used to do this. Y'all ain't challenging each other like that. No. The road of least resistance. If I ask them in private, who's the easiest teacher to take for the following courses, they have a list. We can't rebuff that. What we can do is, what can we do on our own? And I'll even use this example. Cornel West, we had a reading group, and he talked about the fact that when he was a student at Harvard, that he and these white guys decided that they were going to read everything they touched. He said, so late at night, outside of classes, we would go into this room and we would read. And so somebody's job was to bring the coffee, somebody's job was to bring the food, so we wouldn't have to move. And we just read and read and read, irrespective of the curriculum. So people don't realize he was a Near Eastern languages studies major at Harvard. He wasn't philosophy. But he said, I read it all. Why? Not because he was special, per se. It was a matter of he decided maybe the Harvard curriculum ain't getting everything I need, so he went. When he went and did his PhD at Princeton in philosophy, he said, I did what they told me to do in class. When I went to my room, I read what I wanted to read. I read James Cone. I read Jacqueline Grant. What I'm saying is you have to pick it up until this thing flips, changes. But I would never accept because they are doing it. The question is, are you doing what you say you need to do and inviting other people to do it with you? I know I'm supposed to stop now. I figured as much. Well, thank you again for your invitation, good brother.
Thank you for coming. Everybody, thank you all for being here tonight. Wonderful talk from Professor Davis. Again, our conference is going on 4 days. It will end on Saturday evening with Michael Harriet.